So, welcome to our 10th lecture in the Beauty and Order of the Reformed Baptist Polity. I've entitled this lecture as Should Pastors Have the Same Qualities, Gifts, and Salaries? In the study of pastoral theology, they don't usually call the money or the honor that pastors get from the local church as salaries. It's usually called remuneration. But for this study, I just put salaries there so that we would understand it better. We have studied first we've understood that it is already a blessing for a local church to have an elder, but we understood that it is a blessing needing we it is a blessing, but we have to acknowledge the fact that we still need more blessings. And so we studied the plurality of elders. And then in that plurality, we've learned that there is parity, meaning there is the pastors in a body of eldership are equal in authority, and at the same time, they are equal in their representation. That's our lecture last week. Now, how about this question? Let's say they have the same representation, they have the same authority as conferred to them by the Lord Jesus Christ. How about the qualities of these pastors? Let's say they must be qualified as per Titus chapter 1, 1 Timothy chapter 3. There should be something in common there. But how about their qualities, their character, their gifts? Are we looking for another elder that not just that has the same qualities as the first elder or same gifts? So that's basically what we're trying to identify this afternoon. And this is what we call the diversity of elders. What does it mean? It means it talks about the distinct gifts, characteristics, and responsibilities, the bulk of responsibilities assigned to them. That also includes the financial support, okay, or the remuneration. Does it have to be the same? Now, according to Alexander Strock in his book Biblical Eldership, he said, although leaders act jointly as a council and share equal authority and responsibility for the leadership of the church, all are not equal in their giftedness, biblical knowledge, leadership ability, experience, or dedication. Okay, I think that's pretty clear from Alexander Strock. And he's not saying that in a bad way, or that's something bad for a church, for them not to have equal gifts, not having the same knowledge about certain topics like covenant theology or apologetics or whatever. It basically doesn't mean that it's already bad, right? I would even say it's actually good. It's actually good for the body of elders to be diverse, even in knowledge. Okay? It would be good for the church. Now, there are, of course, misconceptions when it comes to diversity. First is in the name of diversity, parity is undermined. Okay? Undermining parity in the name of diversity. Sometimes this is done unconsciously or sometimes deliberately. Okay? Uh, there are times when a church would confess or would profess rather that they believe in a parity, but in practice, at times, any church may fall into such. Okay, a group of elders may indeed undermine the equality or the parity. For example, an elder may act as if he has higher authority than the rest of the elders. Okay? Now, I just want to make it clear. There are times when an elder would act this way, but it could be that it's not always the case. Okay, we shouldn't be quick to say, okay, so wala, hindi equality, hindi naniniwala sa parity ito. They don't believe in parity, they don't believe in equality, right? Because we're all sinners. Even the body of elders may fail in this regard. Okay? They may fail in this practice. But just an example, again, an elder may act as if he has higher authority than the rest of the elders. Now, if it's something if it usually happens, then we can say, no, okay, there's something bad here. So, what are the results of this? There will be hostility to different opinions or criticisms among the eldership. Some of the elders hold to such views, while the one who acts as a higher authority feels offended by it. Teka, no, my view is correct. Okay, I have my eschatological view is different from the rest of the elders. They meaning they have a different view when it comes to the end of times or the end or the last things. I have a different view also. So you must submit to the kind of view or to the view that I hold to. Okay? And at times, there will be a use of the pulpit to attack the fellow elders who are not in their favor. Okay? So again, there's that undermining of parity. There's also a failing to consult and getting the consent of other elders on an issue or a decision. Okay? Because an elder does not submit also to the authority of the other elders, he would not seek counsel from his other elders. And again, that's undermining parity. You would think of yourself as someone who has higher authority than the rest. So that could be a problem. Now, for the side of the church naman may treat an elder as superior than the other elders. So, on the other hand, the church may have that thinking that this elder if probably this elder was the original elder in the past years, then they may think that, okay, I'll just listen to this one and not the other. Well, that's also bad. Okay? Remember, equal ang authority ng pastors. Kahit na, even though the other pastor does not have a more regular schedule when it comes to teaching and preaching, that doesn't mean that he has a lower authority. Okay? So, again, the church may treat an elder as superior than the other elders. So, they would rather consult the superior one. Okay? Pangit ng term, no? Superior. Sorry, wala na akong maisip na term. Or better. Ayoko kasing better. But anyway. Second, in the name of parity, the diversity would be unrecognized. Okay? Elders may expect equal amount of monetary income and material support. Maybe an elder in a group of elders would feel, teka, why do I have why do I not have enough time in the pulpit or monetary support? There's diversity. Okay, we elders should not expect. Why is he getting this amount? I should also be getting this amount. Why does he have? Bakit nasa prime time siya? Bakit kilalang kilala siya at dapat ako din? No, hindi ganun yun. Okay? There's diversity. There are other elders. There's an expectation rather to have the same bulk of responsibility. I need to have the same amount of or same schedule. Okay, it's not like that. Okay, just so there's equality. Our call for parity would go beyond that and would unrecognize the diversity. Okay. Now, on the side of the church, there may be on their end, there's unfair demand of equal time. Buti pa to si pastor, binibisita kami, isang pastor, di kami binibisita. Buti pa tong isang pastor na to, nakikita ko sa pulpit, yung isa, hindi ko nakikita sa pulpit. Meron pong diversity. Okay? There's diversity. The church must not expect such demand. Or hindi sila dapat mag-demand rather. Okay? Hindi po ganoon. The point here is that the combination of parity and diversity demands the grace of humility upon all elders and even the members. It's in fact a good thing that there is diversity. It's a good thing that they have different gifts, qualities, characteristics, and even the responsibility. Even yung bulk noon. Okay? According to Greg Nichols, he said, here some may say, is trouble in the making. All this diversity will provoke jealousy, ambition, greed, and division. It should come as no surprise that gospel ministers and other Christian workers struggle with these sins. Yes, envy, jealousy, ambition, and greed are ever with us. Still, the Lord deposits a diversity of gifts in His church. Still, we must honor this diversity. Okay? It is, in fact, a gift from God to shower us with diversity of gifts. We must therefore mortify our envy until we truly rejoice in the influence of more noted brethren. We must mortify our pride until we seek the help of our more gifted brethren. Laboring together with a diversity of gifts requires humility and grace. Okay? So again, the unity and edifying fellowship of the church will be reflected and exemplified in the edifying fellowship of its pastor. Okay? Now, what kind of diversity are we referring to? Of course, when we say that there is a diversity of gifts in the body of eldership, that comes from the presupposition that all members have gifts, and there is a diversity of gifts within the body. Okay? That's according to 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 10 to 11, which says, show us, as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. Whoever speaks, as one who speaks oracles of God. Whoever serves, as one who serves by the strength that God supplies, in order that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. To Him belong glory and dominion forever and ever. One who gives to us these gifts, according to Ephesians chapter 4, when He ascended, He showered us with each and with diverse gifts. He gave that to the church primarily in the offices, pastors and teachers, according to Ephesians 4. But also it says there that everyone has received a gift. And what is it for? It is for the building up of the body of Christ. It is ultimately for the glory of Jesus Christ. Therefore, the diversity of gifts within the body of eldership is for Christ's glory. It is used, it would better build up the church. The diversity would truly help in the building up of the church. And so, to be specific, what kind of diversity? First, there is the diversity in vocation. Okay? There are those who will make the pastorate their lifetime vocation. And there may be those who will maintain an earthly vocation or bivocational. Okay? The church should, I believe, pursue supporting their pastors. In fact, according to Paul, he lives by the gospel, by his ministry. So I believe that, and in Galatians chapter 6, verse 6, there is that exchange. Material things are given to the ones who teach, and those who are taught give material things. Those who teach are receiving these material things. Those who teach, sila yung nagbibigay ng spiritual things through their preaching and teaching. But you see there the diversity, right? There are those who would, depends on the situation, would at the meantime, or probably, again, depends on the scenario, depends on the context, what's happening in their church. There may be those who keep or maintain such bivocational status, and there are those who can be pastors for their entire life. Okay, with no other jobs. Secondly, there is the diversity in giftedness or proficiency. Elders have their gifts optimized in various fields of ministerial duty: preaching, administration, visitation, counseling. Now, is this easily identified when you ordain or when you look for a candidate, a man of God? Is it easily or immediately seen? I mean, such gifts, madali ba yun makita? Probably. I think it's the easier gift that can be seen is the public ministry of speaking, teaching, preaching. However, the others, like the administration, the managing of the household of God, and the others may be seen at a later time. Okay? Pwedeng ganon yun. Thirdly, diversity in honor. Those who have given themselves to the vocation of full-time labor, of teaching, especially rather of teaching and preaching, according to 1 Timothy chapter 5, should be accorded more financial support. So that's according to 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 17. The word honor there does not specifically mean respect, but rather it means money, okay? Financial support. Now, when we look at diversity, this is usually called the first among equals concept, okay? In Benjamin Merkel's book, 40 Questions About Elders and Deacons, he explains what this concept is about. And he gives an example. He specifically about Jesus and his disciples. It says, Jesus himself practiced this concept. Out of the 12 disciples, Peter, James, and John were chosen to receive special attention from their master. And out of the three, Peter often was singled out and given special leadership. Because of his gifts and calling, he was the most prominent among the apostles. Yet, Peter was an apostle just like the rest of the 12. He was never given a special title. He did not wear different clothes or receive a higher salary. The others were not subordinate to him or function as his attendants or servants. He was equal in rank and authority to the rest of the apostles. At the same time, however, he was a natural leader and as such became the first among equals. So Peter was not the super apostle. If you're familiar with the super apostles that Paul was rebuking, hindi sila yon. Okay? Ito, yung mga acting apostles yun ng time ni Paul. But Peter was not like that. But I think the fact that he has more airtime, he has more time, mas marami siyang, mas nababasa natin siya sa scripture, safe to infer that he, according to Benjamin Merkel, that he was indeed a natural leader. But it doesn't mean that he has higher authority than the others. Yung iba nga, nakalimutan na natin yung name. Diba? Marahil, probably we're more familiar with the other names of the apostles. Right? Andrew, Bartholomew, si Bart, si Drew. Probably we don't know them, but all I'm saying is they have the same authority. They have the same apostolic authority. Whatever Bartholomew said, whatever Andrew said, he's speaking under the authority of Christ. And yet we know more about Peter, right? But they have equal authority, right? But they have different gifts rather. Now, when it is applied to the church, some of these points, we've already tackled them in the past lectures. Because when we speak of parity, we're also dealing with diversity. Okay? So when it is applied, what we mean is that diversity of elders, it means that some elders may have a larger share of the pulpit. And it's not bad. And it's also, it's not something, kumbaga, uh, hindi ibig sabihin, it doesn't mean that the other pastors do not have the same authority. They have. Okay? Some are more gifted to teach and preach, or some may really just have more responsibility in preaching. Depends on the scenario, depends on the context. Okay? Secondly, diversity of elders means that some elders may take a larger share of visiting and counseling. Um, I think it's wiser for those um, who are have a larger share of the pulpit, have lesser time when it comes to the visitation and counseling. And then those who have lesser share in the pulpit would have more share when it comes to visiting and counseling. Depends on the system that the body of elders would have. But I think that would be wise. That's the reason why there's plurality in the first place, for a pastor not to do everything, right? Third, some diversity of elders means that some elders may have a higher profile in church administration. Okay, for example, in elder meetings, one can be appointed as a chairman to preside. One elder, due to experience, probably age, or his giftedness, may be more suited to preside than the other elders. Okay? Or an eldership may rotate the duty of chairing meeting, who will lead in such meeting. Okay? Or we're talking of, let's say, siguro more than 3 elders ito. Kaya may mga ganitong mga chairman and all. But yeah, some may have, maybe leading such meetings moving forward. According to John Owen, who, by the way, he was not a Presbyterian, he was a Congregationalist. He said, I do acknowledge that where a church is greatly increased, so as that there is a necessity of many elders in it for its instruction and rule. Decency and order do require that one of them do, in the management of all church affairs, preside, to guide, and direct the way and manner thereof. So the presbyters, he was referring to bishops, presbyters, pastors, it's the same term. Okay? So the presbyters at Alexandria did choose one from among themselves that should have the preeminence of a president among them, whether the person that is so to preside be directed unto by being the first converted or first ordained, or on the account of age or of gifts and abilities. So he's saying what the criteria were to choose, to guide them as to, or to guide them in their decision as to who they will put as a chairman in a meeting. So whether he continue for a season only and then another be deputed unto the same work, or for his life, or things in themselves indifferent, to be determined according to the general rules of reason and order, with respect unto the edification of the church. So when a body of elders meet, and by the way, they should regularly meet, because as they all are called to teach and counsel, not having different bulk of responsibilities, but these roles are all in their kasama, in a sense, sa kanilang job description. They should regularly talk. They should regularly meet. Okay? Para mas magkaintindihan sila. Fourthly, diversity of elders means that some elders may have a wider influence or recognition. It's also not something bad. Some will gain renown through ruling well for many years, while others will labor in relative obscurity and seclusion. But it doesn't mean that they have lesser authority in the church. Fifthly, diversity of elders means that a pastor need not to worry about doing everything, which I mentioned a while ago. And sixthly, diversity of elders means that all pastors need not necessarily receive the same remuneration or same financial support. Now, we'll focus more on this part. Okay? According to our Second London Baptist Confession of Faith, chapter 26, paragraph 10, it says there, it is incumbent on the churches to whom they minister not only to give them all due respect, but also to communicate to them of all their good things according to their ability. So you see there in the Confession of Faith that the church is has that responsibility to not just honor and respect in the Hebrews chapter 13 sense, but also to communicate to them or to share to them. This is in the language of Galatians chapter 6. Okay, sharing to them all things, all good things, and this refers to the material things. Primarily, of course, financial support, because they're the ones who are receiving the spiritual things through the preaching. Okay, and here, according to the confession, it says, also to communicate to them of all their good things according to their ability. So you see there the language of diversity, right? It means that they're not receiving the same amount when it comes to financial support. Okay? That is clear in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 17. It says, let the elders who rule well be considered worthy of all of double honor, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. Right? So it means that there are elders in a local church, and there are elders who, in fact, identified by the church. Now, the scriptures did not specify how they identify. I think it's in a sense about organic. Okay, that there are a group of elders, and there are elders who rule well, and then among those who rule well, it says here, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. Okay? Now, what did Paul mean when he said double honor? Now, we have to go back to the context of 1 Timothy chapter 5. In verse 17, he's speaking of double honor because he spoke about single honor in verse 3. 1 Timothy chapter 5, it says, who are those members of the church who will be receiving that single honor? These are the widows. It says, honor widows who are truly widows. Now, Paul is saying, so specifically in their context, there are widows. Widows are those who have no husbands. In fact, especially in their time, what they meant, the truly widows, so you see the qualification there. Truly widows are those who really have no family members who can support them anymore. Hence, Paul is saying, you are Christians, you are the church, then support these members who have no family members, no husbands, no sons and daughters, no siblings. It's you who should support them, Paul is saying. That's what he meant by honor. Hindi, this is not the honor when, kumbaga, pag pumasok siya sa pinto, magmamano tayo lahat. Hindi, no. Honor, this is financial. This is financial. It says here, so in verse 3, Paul is saying to honor only those who are real widows. Right? Now, a woman may be a widow in a sense that she doesn't have a husband anymore, and yet she still have a son who can support for her, who can give her support. Now, the question is, will she be qualified as a widow that should be supported in the context of 1 Timothy chapter 5? Now, let's look at the qualifications that Paul has given. Verse 4 in 1 Timothy chapter 5, it says, but if a widow has children or grandchildren, let them first learn to show godliness to their own household and to make some return to their parents, for this is pleasing in the sight of God. Paul is saying, kung merong anak yan, kung merong mga apo yan, hayaan mo muna, yung mga anak at mga apo, suportahan yung widow nila. Yung family member na yon. Paul is saying. Verse 5, she, and again, there's a qualification, she who is truly a widow, left all alone, that's the qualification, has set her hope on God and continues in supplications and prayers night and day. So there is that qualification that this widow should not have anyone in her, wala na siyang family member. And at the same time, siya ay merong spiritual qualification. Did you see the spiritual qualification there? Right? One who sets her hope on God. It seems as if the church and the elders of the church must identify that this is a mature woman in the faith, right? Has set her hope on God and continues in supplications and prayers night and day. Verse 6, eto, if she is, but she who is self-indulgent is dead even while she lives. Oh, not those who are self-indulgent. Okay? So again, there are qualifications. Verse 7, command these things as well so that they may be without reproach. But if anyone does not provide for his relatives and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Paul is saying that if this widow has family members, allow these family members to support this widow, because if these family members do not even support this widow of ours, they're worse than an unbeliever, assuming that these family members were believers. Okay? Now, verse 9. If ever a widow meets that qualification, according to verse 9, let a widow be enrolled. So there's like an enrollment, a list. Probably a deacon lists down, probably my database siya, lists down the whoever widows are there that are qualified. Let a widow be enrolled if she's not less than, there's another qualification, if she's not less than 60 years of age. Okay? Having been the wife of one husband and having a reputation for good works. If she has brought up children, has shown hospitality, has washed the feet of the saints, servant, has cared for the afflicted, and has devoted herself to every good work, but refused to enroll younger widows. So if there are younger ones, don't enroll them. For when their passions draw them away from Christ, they desire to marry and so incur condemnation for having abandoned their former faith. Better if they're still young, most likely they may find another man of God and be married. Okay? So, verse 13. Besides that, they learn to be idlers, going about from house to house, and not only idlers, but also gossip and busybodies, saying what they should not. So I would have younger widows marry, bear children, manage their households, and give the adversary no occasion for slander. For some have already strayed after Satan. Verse 16, if any believing woman has relatives who are widows, let her care for them. Let the church not be, take note. Again, we're talking about financial support here. If the widow has especially a Christian family member, let that Christian relative support the widow, let her care for them, so that the church will not be burdened. And by the way, isn't that a good thing to, in fact, support a widow? But you see here, what's in the eyes of Paul, what's more important? That it could be a burden to the church if there's a widow, and yet, kaya naman pala siya supportan. O, don't support na. Kesa ma-burden pa tayong church. Don't use the money anymore for that if there's someone who can, in fact, support that widow. I'm not saying that Paul is saying that, okay, benevolence, that shouldn't be a ministry in the church. No, in fact, he's saying that there should be a benevolence ministry, right? But you see here a comparison. You'll see here a comparison because now we go to verse 17, right? Let the elders who rule well be considered worthy of double honor. A widow all left alone, honor her. Once she meets that qualification, enroll her to the list of those worthy to be receiving honor. And yet, Paul is saying, that's good. But most importantly, what we should prioritize is the ministry of the word, the shepherding in the local church. Paul is saying, double mas doble pa ang ibigay nyo doon sa mga elders who rule well, especially those who preach and teach. Right? And so you have there the contrast. The adjective double may literally indicate twice the amount, but it can also simply mean amplitude or abundance. So the use of double honor is to compare the benevolence from the ministry of the word with the latter being prioritized according to Professor Sam Waldron. All of this makes abundantly clear that the contrast intended in the text is between honoring widows and double honoring well-ruling elders. Widows are to be honored financially. Elders are to be doubly honored financially. In contrast to widows with their comparatively small needs, well-ruling elders are to be the objects of a generous and ample material support from the church. So the honor rendered here is not that of status in hierarchy, but in financial support, specifically in this context. Now, what do we mean by those who labor in preaching and teaching? The word that Paul used there, the word well, accommodates a comparative and a superlative. Okay? Comparison in view. This is the comparison in view. Excellently ruling elders and qualified good elders. Of these excellently ruling elders are those who labor in word and doctrine. So the comparison is about gifts and ability, not authority, because we know that they are equal in authority. So Sam Waldron again is saying, we may say that implicit in Paul's reference to well-ruling elders is the idea that the well-ruling elders are an inner circle in a large circle of good and qualified elders. It is also explicitly contrasted with a smaller circle within the circle of well-ruling elders, especially those well-ruling elders who labor in the word and teaching, the public ministry of the word, are to be supported. Now, if you look at the screen, I'll show you quickly a diagram I copied from Sam Waldron. So, yan yung mismong ginawa niyang diagram. So when we look at 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 17, it says, let the elders who rule well be considered worthy of double honor, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. So there is comparative, but at the same time, you should look at it in a superlative manner. There are, presupposing we have good and qualified elders. So walang disqualified elders, lahat good and qualified. And among the good and qualified, there are those who rule well, whom counsel, who manage, who has given their time, who has also preached and taught. But among that group, according to Waldron, there's that inner circle. At yun ay yung mga, hindi pala kita yung different colors, but you see the circle, right? There are those who, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. So in that way, doon makikita natin yung superlative, right? Among the qualified and good elders, there are those who rule well, and among those who are well-ruling elders, there are those who spend more of their time in the teaching and in the preaching. So thanks to Waldron for giving us this diagram. So as a conclusion, according to Mark Dever, in his book, A Display of God's Glory, he said, probably the single most helpful thing to my pastoral ministry among my church has been the recognition of the other elders. The service of the other elders along with has had immense benefits. A plurality of elders should aid a church by rounding out a pastor's gifts, making up for some of his defects, supplementing his judgment, and creating support in the congregation for decisions, leaving leaders less exposed to unjust criticism. Such a plurality also makes leadership more rooted and permanent and allows for more mature continuity. Now, I want to make it clear also that the quote that I've read was from Mark Dever, and he is in a Christian church that has a different church government. He's in fact a senior pastor, right? But he understands what parity is in a Baptist church. Okay, so gusto ko lang i-clarify kasi he has many books about parity, about church government, but currently kasi he's in a church that has such government, and his church was what, more than hundreds of years ago pa. Okay, so I just want to clarify it, but he definitely understands what Reformed Baptist polity is. So let's go back to the question: should pastors have the same qualities, gifts, and even salaries? No, because supplying the church with a diversity of gifts and pastoral qualities is, in fact, a work of the risen and exalted Christ. That's a result of his work. That's, in fact, his gift to the local church. And every member should be able to benefit from a body of elders that has diverse gifts. So that ends our lecture. Any questions? Yes, John? Sorry. Yes, Elise. Sorry. Di pa nagtaas si John. Si Elise. No, hindi nagtaas si John. So, sorry. I know you have, yes. I know. Sige, Elise.
So, can you there who is good and qualified but does not rule well?
Right. That's a good question. Although Paul does not specifically say, kasi yung ruling involves overall, thank you, involves the overall task of the elder. So that would include teaching, preaching, counseling. I guess, kasi dahil nga hindi niya in-specify, I think we can infer na what he meant by ruling well, it involves yung more time doon, mas nagibigay niya yung time na doon. I think, may subjectivity, I would say, because the church would identify it on their own. Okay, I think organically madidetect yun ng church. Obviously wala siyang binigay na na criteria, but I think again, yun nga, ma-identify siya ng church, and then from that short list of elders who rule well in the view of the church, siguro sino yung mas tingin nila mas sa preaching and teaching, and then doon nila ibabase, I would say, yung kanilang financial support. So when we say siguro when we think of elders ruling well, that kumbaga encompasses yung lahat ng kanilang ginagawa. And ginagawa nila yun nga, dahil may comparative, we would say okay, probably better than the other. Sige, meron pa bang question? Oh yes, it's Troy.
As we follow up the same question, is it correct to then equate ruling with managing?
Yes, we can. Kasi sabi sa qualifications ni Paul, he also parang correspondent siya. Kumbaga parang one of the qualifications of a pastor should be he's able to manage his own household well. And how can he manage the household of God if he couldn't even manage his own household well? So yes, but I think it's just a part of it. Yeah.
Kasi yung tanong ni Eli, difficulty
Yes.
in understanding how somebody can a pastor is capable but not
Good.
and hello. Alam ko naman kasi that managing actually requires specific skills, knowledge, and a particular aptitude, no?
Right.
Different from teaching, different from counseling.
Right.
So I can see why parity really is diversity and parity is really important in
Yes.
the eldership. And that's one example of kung magaling, maybe capable in terms of preaching and
Mm.
capable in terms of counseling, not managing,
Not managing
right?
it.
Hindi yun ang kanyang strength. Okay. So a follow-up question then is, I can see how things have gone wrong with other denominations. Like obviously the Catholic Church is very hierarchical. There's no parity in their eldership, no. But even among um, other Christian churches, other denomination, the idea of having parang a hierarchy and talagang merong in their case a senior pastor really is sort of above the
Right.
others. I can see how that can, because
Yeah.
corporate structure, di
Yeah.
ba? It's what we are familiar with. But would it actually be correct to say that any church that practices that, having a senior pastor na hindi talaga, there's no parity, is it correct to say that they are being unbiblical?
Yeah, I would say it's unbiblical. It's unbiblical because clear yung terms when the apostles use the terms pastor, even bishop. There's no hierarchy there among the elders. So that's, I would say, that's a bit extra biblical. I would say
Okay.
that's not what the
So
Bible say.
is it correct then to say that some of our churches that we are familiar with that
Yeah.
have that practice that they are in fact not really Christian churches?
Not really. Kasi they may be still believing in the gospel, but they have a different understanding, or they are in error in their understanding of offices.
Okay,
But
so
doesn't mean that
they are Christian,
yeah,
but they have an error in
yes,
governance.
yes,
That's why they have to reform. Parang
ye-
tama ba yan?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Hi, Pass.
Yeah,
Connected
Shana.
to Tito Joey's question. So, for those who practice different polity in terms of the offices, what would be their basis for it? Would you know?
Basis as to why they ended up with such church government. I believe you can trace that even in the first century. There is this early church father whose name was Ignatius, and in one of his writings, he talks about bishops, he talks about elders, and he talks about them in a way that it seems as if the bishops have authority over the other elders. Now, I believe you can't find any writing earlier than that of Ignatius that speaks of such hierarchical, such authority within the body of elders, because even the apostles believe in the yun nga, yung first among equals concept. But in the first century, you have Ignatius. We're not sure if that's exactly what he believed, but of course it's interpreted in that way, and then from that point on, talagang nagsimula. Thank you. Nagsimula na yung pagkakaroon ng parang mas may bishop na may mas mataas na authority. Yes, Kim.
I pass. Dun sa widows po, let's say the widow is a godly widow.
A what?
And
With
a
godly
godly
widow.
widow. So she meets the spiritual qualification. Pero, and may relatives siya who can support her, but kaya, pero ayaw nila. Does that qualify her for the church's support?
yun ang I'm not sure of, but I think whoever that Christian is should heed Paul's warning that he or she is worse than an unbeliever. Yun yung mga, I'm sure there are a lot, may mga fluidity in a sense especially in the decisions of the early elders in their time. I'm sure there are such cases wherein, okay, what if, oh nga no, but ganyan. There are so many of these things, I'm sure. But yun lang siguro yung, I'm not sure how they specifically did it, but I would heed the call of Paul, who said they're worse than an unbeliever if they don't support.
Thank you, Pastor.
John. Yes.
The three qualifications for an elder who's to be considered worthy of double honor is ruling well, especially those who labor in preaching and labor in teaching. Are these necessarily public aspects of the eldership ministry, or can they also include private aspects? Or in other words, is the double honor only reserved to those gifted for public preaching and teaching?
That's a good question. I think it involves both, but if we're gonna quantify them, I think there's more in the part where the ministry is public, like because it's clear. It says especially those who preach and teach, and those are public ministry. But I will not quickly disregard any private aspects or roles in that done in the ministry, because I believe that the other elders would see that too and would probably agree that oh, this man who preaches and teaches also have are doing things well in, I mean, privately. I don't know if I answered your question, brother. Yes, Anthony. Elise.
Pas, what is the correct way for a member to recognize a well-ruling elder?
A well-ruling?
Like, how would I, as a member, because I can imagine
Yeah.
the many incorrect ways of doing it. Like, ay, mas magaling mag-preach si ganyan, so dapat siya yung may
Right.
double honor. So, what is the correct?
Right. Again, unfortunately, walang specific na criteria na binigay si Paul. Parang he left it to our to the discernment of the church, primarily of the leaders, as to who rules well. But I would say, ano ba? So una, above reproach. That's obviously dapat part 'yon. Secondly, I think publicly mas meron siyang ministry publicly. Yeah, right. I understand. Okay. Okay. Sa church. Sorry. Okay. I think just like you said, organically, makikita yon sa years, I would say, years of the ministry. The church is the recipient of the counseling ministry, the preaching ministry of a certain pastor, of certain pastors. And so, I would say, ma-detect nila yon. Siguro, it would be better for, I'm not sure kung, sorry, I'm sure there are other churches na ginawa nila itong, nagkaroon sila ng mga criteria, merong mga wala. Ako medyo hindi ako ano doon sa mga very specific criteria. But I think organically ma-identify na sense ng hindi lang isang tao. Kumbaga, if majority, if not all of the church members truly receives such blessing or ministry from a certain pastor, then I think we can definitely say, okay. And then add to that pa yung labor sa preaching and teaching. So, ayan. Thank you. Yes, John.
In checking whether a person is qualified to be an elder, the qualification of managing his own household well, I'm wondering how is that qualified as to, like, whether his wife and children are submissive? How is that
That's a good
qualified?
question. Yeah, that's a good question. According to Albert Martin in his book na Pastoral Theology, merong 3 volumes yon. Yung part na yon ng qualification, it's you look at the elder as a father in the household, as the head of the household in a sense, right? Now, we don't look at the elder as the head of the church. The head of the church is Christ, right? But in that sense, nakatulad siya ng ama or ng asawang lalaki sa household. How does he manage the household? He treats his wife, he loves his wife well, he disciplines the children, he loves his children, and at the same time, minamanage niya yung household, cooperating with another manager of the household, kumbaga, hindi, wala namang authority, but so, kumbaga, kinukumpara na yun. How you look at a man in the house, paano niya minamanage yung household niya, yung pamilya niya, in that same sense, ganun yung sa church. So, maraming aspect siya. You're thinking of the whole instead of, kunwari, a request of just one person. You're thinking of the entire household, parang ganito. If that makes sense.
Right. So I'm wondering how that happens in a practical sense. If you're discussing person is qualified, will there be people who will just raise their hands and attest? Oh yes, I witnessed that this person exercises this with his family. He's a good father to his kids. He's loving to his wife. Are there people who willingly set forth their own witness to this person's character? Ganun?
Just to clarify, are you asking as to how we nominate a man of God? Okay, good question. Thank you sa question. When it comes to our own local church, walang specific time naman talaga to nominate. Like, okay, let's wait for October and then nominate, right? But it's not done publicly. It's better done privately, and it still goes through the eldership. For example, a person can come to me or Pastor John, and then meron po akong gusto i-nominate, and then meron kasi tayong nomination form. Meron tayo nun. And then pwedeng magsulat doon, and then that person who nominates, tatanungin siya ng body of elders, why do you think this person is qualified? And the one who nominates would have to talk to the body of elders and say kung bakit, in line with what the scripture says in 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1, bakit tingin niya qualified ito? Right? Bakit siya private? Kasi kapag public, paano kung tingin ng elders ay baka hindi pa. Now, hindi ko disregard yung fact that the elders may not know things na alam ng members. There are also things na alam naman ng elders na hindi probably alam ng members. So, but it's important that dadaan pa rin siya sa eldership, and kaya siya private para hindi, let's say, hindi pala, tingin ng eldership ay baka hindi pa or baka hindi. Then at least hindi siya in-announce publicly at baka maging shameful yon doon sa denomination. So yan. Unless na lang kung yung nag-nominate ay sabi niya, sarili niya, yun, medyo weird, kakaiba. But yeah. Any more questions? Yes, Ren. Last question siguro.
Sorry, balik ko lang dun sa isang qualification nga na manages his household well. Kunyari, the pastor has kids na able to make a profession of faith na yung age. Let's say like 13, between the ages of 13 to 18, ganyan. Tas behaved sila. You see them in church, ganyan. Pero it's either someone...
Sorry, teenager na yung anak.
Yeah.
Okay.
Na, like, they able to talk well, eloquent, they understand.
Yes.
Tapos they're behaved, but like you see na either hindi sila nag-make ng profession or sila mismo sinasabi nilang they don't believe, but they're behaved. Like, so I guess I'm like looking lang at what the managing of the household well would mean in that area.
Right. You should treat yung managing the household well in a parang not individual sense, but as a whole. But there's a qualification that would pertain to the individual children of the candidate. For example, in Titus chapter 1, it says there, um, his children, so ito yung qualification ni Paul, his children are believers and not open to the charge of debauchery or insubordination. However, it doesn't specifically mean that they are believers of the faith. Because in Greek, the Greek term here used is submissive, meaning it could be that they would grow probably outside of the faith, and yet they would still be respectful and submissive to the authority of the father. Now, if that's the case, that if they grew up outside of the faith, it is also right for the church to evaluate whether that pastor was faithful to his calling as a father to these children when they were young. That happened to, say, John Piper. There are testimonies, especially of his wife, that he was indeed faithful in rearing them to Christ when they were children. And yet, of course, we know that John Piper doesn't really have the power to save them. And so when one of his child grew up, became an apostate, the church acknowledged that it should not disqualify John Piper. So, ayun. Okay. All right, sige. Let's pray. Our Most High God and Heavenly Father, we're truly grateful for your wisdom. Lord, it is only you who has thought of such beauty, such design in a local church that would truly benefit each and every member of a church. Lord, I pray that you would enable all pastors here, give the pastors here strength. May we be faithful in the calling. Lord, apart from your grace, Lord, no pastor can minister to another. So, Lord, first and foremost, may you strengthen, may you sustain all pastors, not just of this church, but of every local church. And also, Lord, may you strengthen the members, that they would acknowledge the office, that their acknowledgement of such is their acknowledgement of the design of Christ, of the gift of Christ. That ultimately, it is Christ who is glorified. So, Lord, again, we praise you and we thank you for your graces to us. We lift up to you our 3 p.m. worship. May we be fed. We praise you in Jesus' name.